Conor McGregor was very skilled, but what makes it the most popular fighter
For the first
of all
time in over a decade,
For
the
me,
biggest
what attracted me
question
to
surrounding
Conor was his skill set. The shit talking was ice cream on top.
Conor was the best also at, he was very charismatic. You love him, you want to see him win, or you want to see him lose. And, but behind that, he was able to back it up because he was like a sniper with that left hand. Like,
yes.
Boom.
There's had to be a point throughout this
Conor
5 years
McGregor
when he's planning this comeback that he looks in the mirror and asks himself, what the hell am I doing?
I was gonna just chug proper. I was trying to
will ever
get
step
faded
foot
on the
inside
pod.
the octagon
Now I'm
again.
gonna probably just
The
be hitting
devastating
downers.
injury he
That's
suffered
not
against
good
Max
either.
Holloway
Disappointing for
didn't just
everyone,
cost
right? Well, it is what it is.
It hasn't been met, and so he is also a very proud person, and I don't think he wants to go back. If it is truly his body failing him, and he is not healthy enough to compete, I don't think we're ever going to see him again.
For the first time in years, the biggest question surrounding Conor McGregor isn't who he's fighting next. It's whether he'll ever fight again. Another devastating injury, another long recovery, and suddenly the conversation has completely changed. Instead of debating potential opponents or championship dreams, fighters across the UFC are now reflecting on something much bigger. What would the sport actually look like without Conor McGregor? Because whether you love him or hate him, there's no denying one thing. The UFC has never had another superstar quite like him. Dana White has spent years backing McGregor as one of the biggest attractions combat sports has ever produced.
Instead of debating potential championship matchups or historic comebacks, fans and fighters alike are forced to confront a harsh new reality. The silence that fell over Las Vegas that night felt less like a temporary setback and more like the closing curtain on the most explosive era in combat sports history. What made Conor McGregor a global icon wasn't just his mouth, but his rare ability to back up every single word, while his legendary trash talk captured the mainstream media and brought millions of new eyes to the UFC. It was his elite martial arts skill set that cemented his status. Behind the theatrical press conferences and the designer suits was a lethal pinpoint sniper with a left hand that could.
And while nobody inside the UFC has suggested his career is over, fans have naturally started asking the question after UFC 329. If this really was McGregor's final walk to the octagon, how would the rest of the MMA world remember him? Joe Rogan has never hidden his admiration for what McGregor achieved. He's repeatedly spoken about the Irishman's ability to completely change the sport, bringing millions of new fans into mixed martial arts while becoming one of the biggest pay-per-view stars in combat sports history. Even after the injury against Max Holloway, Rogan's focus wasn't just on the fight itself. It was on how quickly one unfortunate moment can completely change the direction of a legendary career.
She throws the kick.
In seconds.
Again, I know you'll be saying I'm reading a lot into this in the comments, but just look, boom, and then it's like a little stumble back. Like, it's not conclusive proof that there was anything wrong, but it's not McGregor at 100% either. Like, that doesn't look great. And then the third time he throws it on the footage, boom, and then he walks away. So we don't actually see McGregor in full flow, like kick, like hammering the pads. Or it's almost like, and I'm not saying that this is the case because it's hard to know, when they needed their footage, he's like, all right, let me do the kick I'm going to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, potentially that's possible. Because this kick and then him walking off doesn't prove he was fine to me. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, well, he threw the kick on the pads. Aye, and then he walked away immediately. Like, he did three. It's very possible that there was a tear that was bad enough to not be able to win a fight, but that he was still able to pretend for a minute. Very possible. Fighters have done this for time, by the way.
A routine exchange quickly turned into disaster as McGregor's left knee visibly gave out, causing him to stumble back in clear agony. Even as Max Holloway stood over him, urging him to get back up, it was clear to everyone watching that the body had simply refused to cooperate. When the referee stepped in to stop the bout, it felt like a cruel repetition of past misfortunes, leaving the MMA world to wonder if we have finally witnessed the literal.
John Jones has also spoken over the years about McGregor's impact on the UFC. While the two have often taken different paths inside the sport, Jones has acknowledged that McGregor reached a level of worldwide fame very few fighters will ever experience. Regardless of rivalries or opinions, fighters understand exactly what McGregor has contributed to the growth of mixed martial arts. Islam Makhachev has consistently shown respect for McGregor's achievements, even while representing a completely different generation of champions. The same can be said for Khabib Nurmagomedov. Their rivalry became one of the biggest in UFC history, but even after everything that happened between them, Khabib has acknowledged the magnitude of McGregor's influence on the sport. Rivalries eventually fade.
The first time I thought he just legend. Despite the bitter rivalries and the endless drama, McGregor's profound impact on mixed martial arts is universally acknowledged by his peers. From John Jones to Islam Makhachev, and even his greatest rival Khabib Nurmagomedov, the elite of the sport recognized that Conor elevated the entire UFC ecosystem. He transformed ordinary weigh-ins into stadium-sized spectacles and rewrote the financial pay scale for every fighter who followed him. He didn't just break pay-per-view records. He single-handedly forced the mainstream sports world to treat MMA with the respect it deserved. The UFC now finds itself in a highly delicate situation regarding its biggest asset. The fight game is notoriously unforgiving, and historically, the promotion has a tradition of feeding aging lions to the hungry young prospects on their way out. However, treating McGregor like just another devalued fighter on a losing streak feels wrong for a man who built the modern house of the UFC. Striking the balance between a fair athletic matchup and a respectful exit strategy is a massive challenge, because in this sport, nobody gets a fairy tale ending without paying the price. Whether Conor McGregor finds the strength for one final, miraculous rehabilitation, or chooses to permanently step away, his footprint on culture is permanent. He won't just leave behind championship belts, historic multi-division titles, or highlight reel knockouts. He leaves behind a blueprint.
But legacies tend to last forever. Tom Aspinall has often spoken about the pressure that comes with carrying the UFC into a new era, something McGregor did better than almost anyone before him. Paddy Pimblett has also recognised the doors McGregor opened for fighters from the UK and Ireland, proving that personalities can become global superstars while still performing at the highest level inside the cage. Justin Gaethje has always respected anyone willing to step into the octagon under that level of pressure, while Ilia Topuria has repeatedly spoken about wanting to build the kind of legacy that allows his name to be mentioned alongside the biggest stars in the sport. Whether they grew up watching McGregor or eventually competed during the same era, almost every elite fighter has felt his influence in one way or another, and that's why this injury
of what a combat sports superstar can be. If this truly was his final walk to the octagon, he departs not as a broken fighter, but as the man who changed the game forever. The sport will move on. New champions will rise, but there will simply never be another Notorious. For the first time in over a decade, the biggest question surrounding Conor McGregor isn't who he will fight next, it's whether he will ever step foot inside the octagon again. The devastating injury he suffered against Max Holloway didn't just cost him a fight, it completely shifted the narrative of his entire career. Instead of debating potential championship matchups or historic comebacks, fans and fighters alike are forced to confront a harsh new reality. The silence that fell over Las Vegas that night felt less like a temporary setback and more like the closing curtain on the most explosive era in combat sports history. What made Conor McGregor a global icon wasn't just his mouth, but his rare ability to back up every single word, while his legendary trash talk captured the mainstream media and brought millions of new eyes to the UFC. It was his elite martial arts skill set that cemented his status. Behind the theatrical press conferences and the designer suits was a lethal pinpoint sniper with a left hand that could put anyone to sleep in seconds. He was the ultimate anti-hero, a charismatic force whom you either desperately wanted to see win or passionately hoped to see lose, but could never look away from.
He might have
stepping back into the cage after a 5-year layoff introduces a psychological warfare that no amount of money can fix. For years, McGregor has been telling himself and the world that he is still the apex predator, but deep down, the lack of recent evidence creates an undeniable internal panic. It is one thing to project absolute confidence while drinking on a super yacht, but it is another to look in the mirror and realize your body might no longer match your ambitions. That hidden nervousness, that weakness in the knee, is the heaviest burden an aging champion can carry when trying to recapture a ghost from his past. The sequence in his last fight was painful to watch for anyone who respects the sport. In the middle of the action, a routine exchange quickly turned into disaster as McGregor's left knee visibly gave out, causing him to stumble back in clear agony. Even as Max Holloway stood over him, urging him to get back up, it was clear to everyone watching that the body had simply refused to cooperate. When the referee stepped in to stop the bout. It felt like a cruel repetition of past misfortunes, leaving the MMA world to wonder if we have finally witnessed the literal...
Feels different. Yes, injuries are part of mixed martial arts. Every fighter accepts that risk the moment they enter the cage, but when it happens to someone like Conor McGregor, the conversation immediately becomes much bigger than one fight. It becomes a discussion about legacy, unfinished business, and whether one of the most recognizable athletes in UFC history has one final chapter left to write. Many fans still believe McGregor has another comeback in him. Others wonder whether another lengthy rehabilitation after years of setbacks might finally convince him to step away. At this stage, nobody knows exactly what decision he'll make, and that's what has kept the entire MMA world talking ever since UFC 329 came to an end. One thing, however, is almost impossible to argue against. Very few fighters have changed mixed martial arts the way Conor McGregor did. He transformed press conferences into global events, broke pay-per-view records, inspired an entire generation of fighters, and helped push the UFC further into mainstream sport than ever before. Whether you supported him or wanted to see him lose, people always tuned in. Now, as McGregor begins another road to recovery, the sport waits once again. Will this simply become another chapter in one of the greatest comeback stories MMA has ever seen, or has the UFC already witnessed the final walk of its biggest superstar? Whatever the answer turns out to be, one thing is certain. If Conor McGregor ever does decide to leave the UFC, he won't just leave behind championship belts or highlight reel knockouts. He'll leave behind a legacy that changed the sport forever, and one that fighters will still be talking about for years to come.